committee with other people present, remote, everybody, but Kevin, Carson, Jackie,
I'll introduce them when you're ready.
and somebody else. So, meeting agenda, roll call, I guess, roll call. Derek, I said it before, November 5th, November Brian. Anybody have anything they'd like to add to the agenda? That will proceed with the LED presentation.
I'll start it off. I'll introduce Jake here in a second. Been working on this for 6-8 months now. It started off with looking at how many dollars we're putting into maintaining our lighting systems. It just, buildings are getting older, they keep going up in ballast and whatever. So I looked at, first of all, at maintenance, and there's, trying to keep up with it 10 years down the road, there's no way the budget's going to handle that. Thought about LTFM. Well, only part of this project would fit under LTFM, we hope. And then I looked also at, as an energy project, even though it'll save us day one, $85,000 a year, it doesn't cash flow for quite a few years, so there's some pain to get there, which we want to talk about. I originally wanted to bring this as something, a slam dunk. I thought this would fit, but after seeing the scenarios for payoffs, and I know the money problems we have in the district, I'm not going to ask us to go through pain until we talk through it. So it's just a presentation tonight. I want everyone's feedback and what do you think of the project? Are we on the right track? Are you crazy, Kevin? Whatever the case may be. And so I'm going to have Jake go through the presentation of what we did. We're very thorough. I can tell you right now for the fixture how many are in the district now. And after he's done, then we'll talk about the financing options with Jackie, some of the conversations I've had with the Department of Ed. And then Sherry will probably be here because she wanted to talk a little bit about the benefits to special education clientele as well. So with that, let's start with Jake. I'll pop up to the middle here so people can hear you as well. Go through the presentation and we'll go from there. We're going to try to keep the whole thing here under a half hour because they have busing and stuff to do yet as well.
Okay.
Including our conversations.
Okay. Can I share my screen?
Sure.
See it? Okay, perfect. Well, like Kevin said, my name is Jake Andrus. I'm with the Retrofit Company, so I've been working with Kevin for quite some time here to look at different options on potentially upgrading the lighting. So we got a real simple slideshow we'll kind of run through and try to be as efficient as we can. So on average, the average public school in the United States is 44 years old with an average functional age of approximately 20 years old. So we had quite a few different goals that we put together for this project. First one being maintenance. So we want to reduce our ongoing maintenance costs related to our lighting systems across the whole entire district. Consistency was another goal. We wanted to install consistent lighting solutions across the district to reduce the costs and just more effectively maintain each facility. Productivity. So we want to increase the efficiency and productivity of our facilities and maintenance staff, allowing them to focus on non-lighting related maintenance. So obviously there's a lot of other responsibilities they have beyond maintaining the lighting system. Energy efficiency. So obviously utilizing this project opportunity to make the district even more energy efficient, reducing those overhead operational costs. Rebates. So take advantage of the current Xcel Energy utility rebate programs and incentives to replace the inefficient fluorescent and metal halide technology with LED. Hazardous waste. So we want to remove regulated waste from our facilities by removing all the mercury lamps and any other remaining PCB ballasts. This reduces the risk for regulatory and safety incidences, also reduces ongoing recycling costs. An educational setting, obviously we want to implement lighting technology that's going to enhance our learning environment for our students, teachers, and staff. In the community, we want to promote a positive community support for our district and the positive changes we're implementing to foster the best environment for our students, staff, and teachers. Going green, we want to positively engage the community with our district-wide green initiatives to promote more environmentally friendly facilities. Things you guys have done previously with solar and other things like that, and Kevin's done actually 3 efficiency projects in the past. And number 10, lifespan. So we want to install a long life LED technology that's going to allow our planning and budget committees to address the most relevant and pressing issues. So what can we do? So what do we do to achieve these goals? Install quality, long life LED solutions through the entire district. These solutions offer sufficient light levels and limited maintenance for 30 years. So how do we decide which option we do? Ultimately, we've determined that we have 3 different options. So option A is to keep going as we are. So maintaining the current fluorescent and metal halide lighting system. Option B would be to replace with LED light bulbs. So we're going to upgrade to LED bulbs, not fixtures. This is the more economical, with a little less energy savings and about a 10-year solution. Option C is LED fixtures, upgrade to LED new fixtures, more than 57% lower cost of ownership over the next 30 years than option B. So a summary of option A, so maintaining our current lighting system. So keep going as we are, maintaining our current system. Total cost to maintain this system with inflation over the next 30 years is $1.194 million.
We've read all this, so you don't have to read it.
Okay.
Skim it.
Yep, fair enough. Option B, obviously light bulb LED replacement. Highlighting, I just want to highlight here, this is about a 10-year solution. Option C, obviously what we recommend is the fixture upgrade to 30-year solution, offering that lower cost of ownership. And I think we'll be doing, this is where Sherry can definitely help to extrapolate some of the benefits beyond the savings. So obviously some of the things I've mentioned on our goal, but we'd be doing ourselves a disservice if we didn't think about the benefits beyond. Studies show that more than 90% of people with autism spectrum disorder are sensitive to external sensory stimulation. Bright lights being a great issue of concern. One thing I want to highlight on here is that fluorescent light bulbs do have a flicker. Some of you might have experienced some headaches or know people who have. Maybe you don't necessarily see it yourself, but it's there. LED light bulbs, so option B, does also flicker. Bulbs flicker. LED fixtures do not. So one thing to compare between option B and C. So obviously, with part of this project too is the color tuning technology. So this is a specific lighting, as you can see in the visual aid here in the pictures, that you can tune the lighting, get rid of the fabric on the ceiling, and tune that lighting to help benefit the students in that classroom that are specifically to sensory sensitivities and the autism spectrum disorders. The tunable lighting controls give that customized learning environment for that school, for that class. It also helps teachers maintain and better manage that class, and it obviously helps the better student engagement throughout those classrooms as well. So
that would just be in certain classrooms.
Correct. So Sherry's picked out certain rooms throughout the district that she would like to have this technology. We do have a video that we didn't want to play. I don't know if we have time for it or not. But it's a video from it's a case study from 2 school teachers in Faribault that we recently did this color tuning project. Talks about how that lighting benefited their classroom and continues.
It's like 6 minutes or something.
About 6 minutes.
Sherry said it was really important, so maybe we should.
I think it would really make the picture well.
We just have Terry and then double listening after this. The Jake's hustling too.
I'm giving you
Good
the.
job.
Hopefully you get sound. up here.
Something you got going on
Delayed.
there. Let's have Sherry talk about what
Yeah.
they said there.
So I think, Jake talked about the flickering, that can act, our students are watching, that can actually trigger some of their.
Just try to stop it.
That can trigger their,
Let's have Sherry talk about what they said there.
oh, you have delay. Yeah, and she talked about the. Lights. And no one kids have the natural environment, boosts their productivity and their concentration. That study in Faribault, teachers almost immediately, that the students were more engaged, there were, and less behaviors occurred during that time. More engaged and less behaviors, were a clear, outcome almost immediately. So, because it can be, you know, that natural environment. The fluorescent lights also cause headaches, migraines. The LEDs can just make it a more nurturing environment for our students. So we're really looking at the classrooms where we have students who have struggled with behaviors more, or in students on the autism spectrum disorder. I know we're trying to go quickly, but is there something you'd like to add, Jake?
No, well, I definitely want to, I think it's important to see the video, not just, you know, that's from two teachers that are in the classrooms doing it, and that's obviously the benefit is to the students and those teachers. I think, as I mentioned, the regular classrooms will benefit from the not having the fluorescent flicker, as Sherry mentioned. But the tunable lighting is really a newer technology that, you know, it really eliminates the need for the fabric on the ceiling. It gives teachers control of that room with the control module in the classroom. They can adjust it as needed. We'll get you the link to the video so you can watch it afterwards. I think it's important to note that some of the feedback the teachers have given in there, just because it's just the reaction of the students. And, you know, a lot of times these classrooms are the classrooms that maybe don't get the attention that they need. And now this type of thing has brought attention to those rooms, and people wondering what's going on in this room, instead of maybe turning a blind eye to that room.
So as the teachers adjust, there's warmer lights and cooler lights, for instance. So if they want to increase the alertness of the students, they can switch to more of the reds, the oranges. If they switch to more of the blues, they're going to see calmer behavior from the students. And they've even seen increase in reading fluency during that time, when we kind of slow the student down through the use of that cooler lighting. And I don't know if you've been in our classrooms where we have, like Jake said, the fabric over the lights to kind of try to create that.
So yeah, definitely. And then there's a lot of school districts that are looking at doing this in different rooms in their district. We have, you know, it's definitely a value it's hard to extrapolate a number as more what value that brings to the district or to the community. So I think it's just something that to keep in mind, as you know, a lot of times these projects really get looked at from a monetary standpoint only. It's so hard for, you know, through this process to kind of, you know, how do we pay for this advanced technology, which has a bigger price tag than some of the more basic technology? How do we justify that in a way that's monetarily responsible? But so it's really hard to portray that. So this video, and just, I guess that's just what I'd want to portray in addition to what Sherry was saying. That's all I got.
What year do you show again the building was built?
Pardon me?
What year do you show that the high school was built?
The high school was built in 1994, 95 it opened. So we're going into year 27 on what's in here, which is the newest building.
I was thinking 96, but I think that's, in 97 they started the road high.
95 was the first year of school.
We opened in 95? That makes sense.
Okay. So, I'm gonna have Jackie go over some of the options, but just like we talked about before, I think we're probably I spoke with the Department of Ed just this morning, and talking to her, like, the positives were energy efficient, the negative were too energy efficient. If we would have done nothing, we still had the old 32-watt bulbs in here that we did when I started. This would be a slam dunk for an energy project, but we've saved a lot over the years. So it's kind of a plus and a plus, which we want to balance it off. So talking with her, she wouldn't say yes, but she said probably it's going to be a partial, because we're probably looking at a hybrid type payment where some of it would be covered with LTFM funds, some of it would be covered through a energy savings type thing, and we'd have to put a little bit covered through the special needs or somewhere else we'd have to come up with, since that's new and we can't improve the school with LTFM funds. It's for maintaining or repairing older stuff that's in your building. So with that, I'll just let you go over a few of the options, and we really want your feedback. Like I said, are we on the right track, or are you not interested?
So I've been working with Baker Tilly, who is our financial advisor, to get some options. So we could do some certificates of participation. The interest rate on those is a little higher. I didn't open it up, didn't know that it was, and it would cost us an additional $135,000 a year beyond the energy. That would be something that would have to come out of our general fund. The better option for us would be a capital facilities bond, and the annual payment on that is about $160,000, with a true interest cost or a net interest cost of about 1.94% right now. They've done some scenarios where they can wrap this around our existing debt so that the payments stay consistent. Right now we have an operating capital facilities bond and an alt facilities bond for the tennis court track project we did, 8 years ago now, Kevin?
Pardon?
The track tennis court project, is that about 8 years ago now we did that? I think it's a 2014.
Before I came on the board, so I graduated 13, but I wasn't happy about it.
The tennis courts were a year before River Bluff.
Yeah, I want to say it's a 2014 bond, so that one is going to come off in a couple of years, and then we could arrange the debt service payment on the new one, so it would just come on. The capital facilities bond, the payments for that come out of our operating capital, so there's no additional tax burden on that. The downside is we were hoping we would get some of our operating capital dollars back when the old bond was retired, and now this would continue it on for another 15 years. We probably, after talking to the Department of Ed today, we would probably be able to do some kind of hybrid again, the capital facilities bond for the portion that is not covered by an LTFM bond. So there would be no impact to taxpayers, except one payment would come out of our operating capital, a partial payment, and a partial payment would come out of our long-term facilities payment.
What do we get each year for the long-term maintenance?
Pardon?
What do we get on average annually from long-term facility maintenance? Money,
We're averaging about $1 million right now,
$1 million a year?
a year.
Is some of that earmarked for something?
Each year, a little bit. Some of it is for the maintenance we're doing every year, ongoing. Some of it is, for instance, right now we're working on next summer's structural spray and repainting and sealing of the newer tennis courts. Those dollars would already be from last year set aside to do that project. So, but as you know, the year before we did much less because we couldn't do the project. So then we're able to carry those dollars forward. For this year, we don't lose them if we don't use them. So some of these bigger projects we need to do that, do less in these few years, so we have the money for, like this year is going to be more because we're doing 2 projects.
One more question, I'll let you guys open. Can we come up with a thought about setting so much of that a year set aside for this cost too. So, anyway, go ahead, Harold.
I was just gonna say, the long-term facility maintenance been around for a period of time. We had the building bond referendum to upgrade our buildings, was it 20 million roughly, or whatever it was. And at the time that was done, it was stated that the intent was we would get our buildings upgraded, and the long-term facility maintenance dollars would take care of things from then on, so we wouldn't have this need for new roofs, because we've had that come along all the way. My concern is, we start trying to pull this money into that, then are we gonna be able to honor that concept that we had at that time? Or is this part of that concept? There's two ways of looking at it.
And we'll have,
My concern is if we start tapping it too much, we're gonna end up where we were again, and say, hey, we're running out of money again, we need some more money to maintain our, to me, it's maintain our building when we don't have money set aside to do our roofs or anything. To me, it's maintenance, other people say it's other things.
that's accurate. If had we done everything I brought forth for the referendum, we did about half of what my recommendations were, 26.6 million. I came with like 45. So no, this is not going to cover everything because
So then we're gonna be
we didn't do everything in the referendum that we needed in the district. We did the most critical items, but we didn't do everything.
Can I answer that? So if we did option A, which is to just keep going as we are, that would come out of our long-term facility maintenance dollars as well. So in this, we're trading the yearly maintenance of the system for a yearly payment on the system.
So basically, I think your numbers were about 14 years.
He went out to 15 on the last
Up to
one.
15 was the longest one we looked at. So for those 15 years, yes, we'd be pulling dollars from LTFM and some of the other stuff. After year 15, then this year it would be 85,000. Obviously, it's going to go up as time goes on, but you'd have at least an $85,000 less to your electric bill through the lighting every year after that. So that's why I'm looking really long term, and that's why I said when I started off with this, didn't want to create short-term pain, so we get 85,000 long term. It's very good for us. So we have to figure out, is there a financing way we can get there without having to do any cuts because of it, basically.
I appreciate your forethought in thinking long-term. I think that makes a lot of sense to be thinking long-term like this in this area, and I like the idea, especially if we can, like Jackie, if I understand you correctly, if that payment continues that we've had before, but now it's on an upgraded system, that makes sense to me in the long run.
And like I said, we weren't asking for a yes or no, not just information. I just want your feedback if we should continue on.
Okay, my initial thought right now is I'm not in support of doing this all at once, but I will consider, hear more about it, but I think this looks like a good goal of where we need to get to, but doing it all at once right now means 20 years from now, we're gonna have 20 years old technology in our lighting, in our building across the board. Who would have thought 25 years ago or whatever that we would have this kind of lighting available in our building when we built? So I'm of the opinion that we should be working in a phased approach where maybe we tackle a building here or special education rooms first or whatever it might be, a phased approach and do something every year over the next 10 years to get to this. That's what I'm looking at this point. Thank you.
What are the rebates and incentives? Is there a time frame on those?
You can speak better to that, but yes, each year they change a little bit, so we're looking at what's in effect right now.
Do we know what 2022 incentives and rebates are yet?
They're going to be really similar to what they are currently. Year by Excel Energy's goals of being, sufficient and sustainable. So their programs typically fall in line with that. They got pretty aggressive goals, which is a good thing. However, rebates tend to trend downward. Just because, to speak to Arlen's point, so LEDs come a long way of squeezing the wattage out. So 5 years ago, you go from a 32 watt bulb to to like a 19 or 20 watt bulb. Now you're in the 10 to 12 watt range. And that's where it's kind of been. And you're not going to be able to squeeze it down to 2 watts or anything like that. It's going to kind of hover around that 9 to 12 watts depending on ceiling height. So LEDs become about as efficient as it can, with the exception to adding controls to it, which is actually part of this. So the technology is still going to be LED, but it's kind of as efficient as it's going to get, which is basically what they base the programs on for savings and efficiency.
I'm kind of interested in the project because LEDs are the way to go nowadays. So, you know, both make good points. Long term, down that way, not replace everything now, what 20, 25 years going to be down the road. We don't know that because the ball is not there for us to look at. But I would like this committee to look at something on paper, what it would be, the costs and how you find the funding for it, the ramifications of different scenarios. So, I don't think we want to say no, but we want more information as to, we talked about what the cost would be, how to fund it, but I think we needed it in some type of document. At least I do. If everybody else just need it verbally, that's fine, but I wanted to.
Probably in conjunction with a long-term facilities maintenance plan too, so we know what we've
Right.
given up.
Yep. So, you know, this could be in January when the whole board meets. That's the next, if we go to that direction. Our next meeting, however that is, how's that? Next operations meeting.
Fair enough.
Questions more?
Thank
Anybody
you.
else? Anybody else have anything else? So Gaylor, do you have some wise wisdom that you want to share with us?
Not this time.
Okay.
They kept it to half hour.
You did. I was looking at it. Okay. Thank you, Jake. Nice meeting you. Thank you. Thanks for coming in. Jerry, Kevin, thank you. Next item we have is,
Transportation.
transportation. Yeah, there it is. Transportation.
Jerry, you want to move up here? And then Sarah Gould's on the call as well.
Okay. Hi, Sarah.
Well, as we're starting to plan for next year, one of the issues we have to figure out is grade configurations. But I think in conjunction with that would be discussion about transportation and you know, the cost for our current system versus the cost of going back to the previous grade configuration model. But we wanted to get more input from this committee to see what variations or what options you want us to consider with each of those two possibilities. So as far as a two-tier system or one-tier system, I suppose the starting which school would go first, you know, could be a consideration, but probably not as important. If you want us to look at changing the walking zone boundaries, we could certainly consider that too. Or if you just want us to do the basic analysis in cost comparisons. And we're looking for feedback from all of you before we work on that study.
Who wants to start? Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I think ideally with the discussions we had last summer in regards to a two-tier system, who goes early, who goes late, was a big discussion point in the community. And there still are those studies that say that high school should start later, students learn better by sleeping in an elementary together. But in the end, it seemed like everybody wanted to start school for all schools just about the same time. That seemed to be the consensus of it. So I think we should look at a goal of trying to have everybody start, all our schools start at a similar time, not necessarily to the minute, but within 10 or 15 minutes. Maybe a half hour spread or something like that, but it didn't sound like anybody's, there's a numerous people dissatisfied when we have a spread of an hour and a half or more.
I completely agree.
So I think that's something that we should try to find out what it's going to cost us to try to get to that goal. And it shouldn't really matter a lot whether we have what our grade configuration is, there'll be starting to be some things in there. You're gonna have, K through 6 at Burnside, or if you're gonna go back to what we did before, there will be some different busing issues in there. Seems to be the cost will be somewhat similar.
Arlen said everything I was thinking. I think the one-tiered system we had talked about last summer, and I think we need to look into that, see if we can make that work.
So,
Just let me, excuse me, sir. I like the one tier. Last year was, he said it much more nicer than I would. It was kind of a disaster when we had bumps around. Who started early, who started late. We made a decision, we had to go back on it. So I was going by the school the other day at 4 o'clock. I'm thinking, man, that's a long time. That's pretty late to get out of school. I was just thinking about that the other day. So, I'm in favor of having serious conversations on a one-tier system. Who starts first, who starts late, right? And to me, just looking at it, not every home, but some homes, the bus would stop at places in the country, would stop 4 times at that house, potentially. Twice in the morning, twice in the evening. Not everyone, probably just some, but to me, that was like something that we should look at. Go ahead, Sarah.
so what I'm hearing is we want to look at busing K through 12 together again on a one-tier system, but so staggering our times, we would add shuttles back into the mix. So that would be something we'd have to, I know that's one of our least favorite things about a one-tier system, but we'd have to look at it. And grade configuration does come into a factor then. If we're looking at keeping our schools K through 6 schools, is that an option? I guess that would be a question I have, is it really does matter, because I have to look at shuttles when we're looking at this. So what our grade configuration is will matter with busing.
Could you at least focus first on going back to the original configuration 3 or 4 years ago?
Yep.
So the 2 Sunnyside, 2 for Burnside, 5-7 Twin Bluff.
Yes.
That option, to try to nail that down so we can compare cost this year versus that.
Yep.
Is that
Yeah.
Going back to an original grade configuration with a start time around the 8 o'clock mark.
Yep.
Okay.
And, I think this is just my thinking, and I hope I'm wrong. I think our enrollment will be less next year. So how that factors in, everything will be something that we'll see more about this coming summer. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, the other thing I'd like, if somebody can take time to at least look into a little bit is kind of a combination of a 2-tier and a single-tier busing. I'm going back to the 70s, when Burnside School was on a different elementary schedule than the rest of our elementary schools in the community, when we had 5 or 6 different elementaries. But at that time, Burnside School students were picked up at the same time in the morning as the rest of the students coming all the way into town. And they were dropped off at Burnside School, and they were starting maybe half hour, 45 minutes early.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the afternoon, those students from Burnside actually rode the bus home on a route by themselves, unless they were coming into town. And it seemed to work back at that time. That's when we had a K through 6 concept. And you look at the geographics of how large our school district is, and to be honest, I don't think the board made the right decision back in the 90s when they decided to put everything up here, but that was the thought that everything was going to move this way. But we got the center core of our high school way out on one side of town. That makes it much more difficult to make all this work. But, so can we look at an idea of a K through 6 at Burnside And those students would get dropped off on the way into town. And then the rest of the students that are on that bus from Alpha Welch area would continue on into town. In the afternoon, the Welch and Basis students at Burnside would get on a bus and they would go home. And the ones in town would get probably taken home from closer to our town, get dropped off on the way into town, and the bus would continue to Twin Bluff or wherever it is to gather at the second town for the rest of the schools. Is that making any sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. I know what your concept is. We do it. Hastings has it. They're actually going away from it. It's a tier and a half is what it's called. One of their elementary schools runs at a different time. It actually runs an early time. And so they're going away from it. And reasoning is you have to create a boundary for your school, and it has to be K through 6 or whatnot. It has to run very similar to what we're doing now with grades at schools. So we would have to pick what that would look like. But I can run a rough draft for you, Arlen. I think it'll give you a good idea on pricing, on what that'll look like. And we can talk through some of the pros and cons about that. There are cons to it, but I can run the scenario. I'm very familiar with what you're talking about.
It can actually shorten time on the bus, I think, for elementary students.
Right. We run into kind of an equity issue when it comes to that, because a lot of families would like that option, and then they don't qualify for that option because they aren't in the Burnside boundary, but they want the shorter ride, they want the earlier start time. We have to work through how we're going to navigate those conversations. So just some of the things that come with that. And so I can run the scenario, and then we can just have those conversations when we're at that point.
Arlen and I drove bus around the same time, and I remember the worst thing we ever did on that. I'm going to do a little history right now because we're in school. Going down by Bryan Addition past Highway 19 was a 2-lane highway, one way each way, before they went to 4-lane. We used to stop, the Welch bus and the 316 bus used to stop on the shoulder of Highway 61 and transfer kids.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, what a disaster. Liability. So Rod France and the principal of Burnside School figured it out, so he put the turnaround out of the old Burnside School, that little place where you can drive through. That was Rod France. And we were like, why do you do that? All of a sudden the light bulb went on. It's like, why did we not have somebody smash into the bus and hurt all kinds of, so everything looks at it.
Your recollection is a little different than mine, because it probably was at that time, but I remember the buses did not stop on the highway back in '74. They went into Bryant Drive and did their switch that first road in off.
I stopped right on the highway.
I'm sure it was probably done at that point. And
the driving a bus.
Turnaround thing at Burnside was also so the buses weren't backing up to get in position to load. So
He said, why don't you run to Burnside School? Makes sense. Anyway, enough of that. Okay, so yeah, you heard us kind of loud and clear, Terry. You got anything?
Yeah. What I would just like to bring up to everybody is, just kind of keep it in the back of your mind. With the 1 tier, they are going to be on the bus longer. For transfers and everything else, when they do mix, where you guys hear the positive feedback on the high school being with elementary, I get the opposite, that there are a lot of parents who do not like their younger students with the older kids on the bus. Discipline issues have significantly reduced. I didn't take last year into consideration because everything was, so much shorter. We do notice that that's been reduced. The administrative staff at some of the elementary schools that I talked to were also saying that with having the same school onto the bus, they feel as though the start of the day has been much improved. While some kids are waiting for all the other buses to show up because we have to drop off early for transfer purposes and stuff, and some kids get there earlier, the stuff isn't starting in the playground beforehand. So there's a lot of different things that should be looked into it too. I pretty much, I wasn't sure if this 2-tier was gonna work this year as well as it is working. I'm telling you, it is working wonderful on my end. There's, especially with the 1 mile walk zone at the elementary school, it was a major concern of mine. And it's working well. I will do whatever you guys need me to do, but I just feel it's, you know, to kind of put in some of those other positives that come in. Pretty much all the routes right now are running at under an hour, hour or less. One of the things when we were a single tier is I did have routes that, I mean, my routes are ending now the same time they did with that. And we are picking up earlier than we were now. So we are going to look at probably hour and a half route times with a single tier system. And they'll be more crowded. So there would be some possible, you know, some discipline issues too. But,
yeah,
that's the thing. We can make both, you know, both can work, you know, it's whatever is best.
Would it make sense to figure out costs for 2-tier and 1-tier with the system that we would, if we went back to middle school or the grade configurations that we had before?
Yeah.
There's so much up in the air right now. I don't want to have you do all of this work and then have us say, no, sorry, we're not interested.
Sarah,
So just what's easiest for you.
Sarah, what's your thoughts? You're the one that.
I think it's a good idea to continue to look at the 2-tier system. Like Terry said, honestly, we've had a really great success with this. Student behavior, huge deal. Our ride times are shorter than riding a 1-tier system. It just will be, and we have less bus drivers that we need. That's a big deal in a global bus driver shortage that we're experiencing. We haven't experienced that in Redwood, and I can tell you every day that I have to help send out communications to families and other districts saying you do not have a bus. You are expected to bring your child to school because we do not have a bus to drive that. The less buses we put on the road, the better we're going to be in that situation. So moving us to a 1-tier system, we will be adding buses to the road. So there are pros and cons to every scenario. And I think it's fair to look at them all. I think we should look at the 2-tier system, 1-tier system. And Jennifer, to your point of, you know, running all these scenarios and then just being like, you know, we're not going to do half of them. That's okay. They're not going to be so detailed that they're not going to be the final detailed ones that we need to do. I think doing an overview on all of these so we have a good idea of what we're looking at is worth it.
Great. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, the biggest thing is the transfers too. It has been awesome with all the transfers happening. It puts less of a strain onto the school staff that has to round all the kids up and move them from one bus to another. I can honestly say that it's much easier to track the kids without that transfer, especially the lowest ones that have to move from one bus to another. But like I said, you know, I'm just throwing this out here to give you something to think about. And
sorry, Terry. I think it'd be great to do a parent survey since we're ahead of this. If you guys are open to that. And run some scenarios. I really think having community feedback, because we're doing it early enough, is a huge thing, because you guys might hear from a few people. We hear really great things. Our staff and teachers are really liking this from what we're hearing. Like Terry said, transfers they're a nightmare for our schools. We have kids arriving a half hour early, kids staying a half hour late. there's all those different scenarios. So if we could pull this together and do a broad parent survey, I think that would be really helpful too.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Doesn't hurt to do that, so, go ahead.
Hearing the positive things about the two-tier system here today, we need to think back to what took place last summer and remember that change is hard for people. And what you think is going to be like and how bad it is may or may not be the way you thought, it may be worse, may be better. So I think the survey is appropriate, but I also think maybe we should try to do a little bit more work before we hit the survey to help us decide on it. But I'm wondering now if this system seems to be working well, from what I'm hearing here on the two-tier system, is there a way that we can bring the start times between the high school and the elementary schools closer together possibly by adding a bus or two to it or something like that? Is there a way we can bring those starting times together closer? My gut tells me we don't want to start elementary any earlier, but I think as much as starting a day later in high school is great, it also creates a late end of the day. So it'd be nice if we could bring if we stayed in a two-tier, it'd be nice if we could bring the end of the day earlier in the high school, which would probably be an earlier start time. So is there some way to be creative and find a way that we maybe can cut 10 or 15 minutes or half an hour, be optimistic, really ask for the world here. If we could bring that start time half an hour closer. And I don't like the word can't, because I don't believe there is such a thing as can't. Can't means you don't want to go any further. I think we need to say, this is what the problems are, this is how we can accomplish it, and so I'd like to hear a little more and come back to us in January.
Maybe if, Sarah, tell me if I'm not speaking right. Maybe if we looked at, if we went to a single tier, we'd be adding buses.
Mhm.
Maybe if we added a few more buses to a double tier system and took those country kids, that's where my stress comes from, Earl and Don Lamb.
Oh, I get it.
That's where my heartburn comes from, is just getting enough time to do that. But, maybe if there was something we did along those lines.
Yeah. I'd like to look at putting us back to grade-based schools like we were prior to, I think, and then look at what our two-tier or like a modified one-tier. I like to play with it a little bit. I think I have a good idea with what you guys are looking for. Really, it's getting as close to an 8 o'clock start time, I think, for everybody is an ultimate goal, without our kids riding for 75 minutes or so. So I think if we run some scenarios and come back to this group and talk through it and narrow it down and then do a parent survey, like you said, Arlen, I think we need to get a good grasp on what we're willing to do as a district and then present those options.
Sounds good, yeah. Scenario where, you just heard what we had to say, and obviously we're here to listen too, to see what you two had to say about it. So we're open to look at different scenarios to better serve our students.
That's what we like to do.
I was glad to hear the positives of the two-tier system coming out tonight. I didn't realize the feeling that things are working better discipline-wise and some other things. I actually thought in my mind that having older kids on the bus with the younger kids would help the discipline, but it sounds like maybe it isn't, so appreciate hearing that.
Yeah, no, because like I said, coming in, I had my concerns. And then when I started seeing how well it was actually working, I've really become a strong proponent of it. And like I said, I'll do whatever we need to do, but, I just wanted that to get out there. The one thing that I would ask is, if it does look like we are going to that one-tier system, that we kind of make that decision, because I'm going to have to get extra buses and some other things too.
Start recruiting soon.
Yeah, and I'm doing really well. just so everybody's aware, I am doing really well, but then also the last time that we went from a two, and I think Sarah can speak to this better because this was the year prior to me starting, is they went from a 2-tier to a single tier, and we lost bus drivers because their pay is reduced.
I remember it on board.
So I'm actually anticipating if we do go to a 1-tier that I'm going to maybe lose a percentage of the drivers. But that's, you know, that's more on on our end.
Yep.
And that's good to hear. You're in the minority because most places are looking for help.
Yeah. Oh, I'm still looking. Oh, trust me,
I mean, it sounds like you've had,
I've had
a good
success.
run of getting
Yeah, I've got 4 van routes that I'm doing now, and I was able to get the van drivers, and things are working well for me, and I'd like to keep it, and because all I know is my sister locations up into the cities, they wish they were in my spot. I'll tell you that. There's some of the routes that start up in the, if you combine them, they're starting day at about 40 short a day. So 40 drivers short.
Well,
So
we're in the same boat they are.
Yeah,
We can't find enough people to come and help us here. So, but that's throughout the whole community.
yeah, and then one, are we done with this part? Because I just have one other thing. Just want to make everybody aware of it. CDC and federal DOT just extended the mask mandates on the buses to March now with the Omicron variant. So no matter what goes on with the schools, we will be masked on the bus through at least March. They had it through the middle of January before, but now it's going till March. So
We're not going to be much different.
no. So
Things here forever. I think the whole thing of COVID is here for.
here for a bit, which also, you know,
We
let's,
always want to be.
with how the routes and keeping them with the schools the way they are now, that's another positive towards everything too. You know, just some things that we have to start thinking outside normal boxes on.
Do you have anything more for Terry or Sarah? Terry or Sarah, do you have anything more?
Nope, I'm good.
All right.
I guess I should add too, and Terry's aware of this. If we do go back to a 1-tier system, we will have to renegotiate our first student contract because we moved it into so it reflects a 2-tier system.
We're always interested in you lowering your contract. No problem.
I doubt that's going to happen, but we'll have to look at it.
Went up when we went to 2-tier, so.
Survey, real quick, survey, who's gonna do this survey?
So I think next steps I should present you guys with some options, and we should narrow down what our survey should look like. So I think we should hold on the survey, but then get you guys some options on what these costs look like for all these. I have for sure 4 scenarios I want to look at.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Terry.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah.
We thought we
Okay.
did both. that time here.
What's that?
We thought we did both things, stop on the highway and Bryan Road.
I think we were right. I think I stopped at
Because
the
I
right
was on
one.
316, I was,
What year was this?
oh, I was 74.
In the 80s?
75 on that, then I ended up in Jason.
See,
Well, you were after.
Alan and Kevin,
Down the hill.
maybe come, talk about the parking lot next?
Parking lot?
Yep.
High school parking lot?
What are we gonna talk about?
I don't know, it's on the agenda.
Yeah, you want to give an update as far as what we did in the parking
Safety
lot?
stuff.
Oh, come on up, Alan.
I think we have that information too here, I thought. Yeah, here it is. You need the list?
Why don't you share what we got?
Hand that down to Alan, please.
Yeah, Kirsten had me reach out to a parent who had some concerns, and we started,
Oh,
which had some really good concerns, so.
I got you.
Alan will just share with what.
Alan, I got your back.
Okay, so, yeah, a couple things that we did, once we got that notice from the parent, is that we did do a paid crosswalk right away outside the district office. That seemed to help a little bit. We also added some of them, barriers for pedestrian crossing, the cars to stop when students are crossing at that point. You know, you can only do so much, some kids cross at different areas, but we tried eliminating the big problem points there. We also have decided, just last week, the last couple of days, it gets really busy in front of the district office stores in that little roundabout there with people pulling in there and picking up kids. So we put cones out at like 2:30, 3 o'clock, just to eliminate cars coming in there, to clean that up a little bit, for the kids to have more access to cross the road there. We've also added Dan McMahon to sit in his car. He's brought up the Mark squad a couple times. Of course, that only works, you know, when he's sitting there, and then, you know, we'll have to see how that works when he's not sitting there. But them are some of kind of the things that we've done just to kind of help with that situation.
I do want to credit Harlan for forwarding that to me, and I just literally forwarded it to you.
There was a parent concern about the parking lot and issues of supposed accident last year and almost being hit this year and different things and stuff, and I forwarded, so I appreciate that. I'm just curious, did the video show anything of near misses or anything when you looked at the cameras at that time? Obviously, you can't be focusing everything with a fixed camera, but it just, yeah, I did. Apparently, there was an issue, though you found it to be something that needed some action, so I really appreciate comments from the public that come to us, and yes, we do act on them.
So we did have one more option that we had. We haven't done that yet, and I think if we did go that route, I'd want to get approval from George or Frank just before we did that, and it would be to block down the one-way lane going out from the circle at the front of the high school. Just put a barricade up there, so you're forcing cars to come through the roundabout and going back out the same way they came in, instead of having them cut through straight through the crosswalk area. That would eliminate more cars and traffic. You know, the situation only really presents itself for like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And once that 15 minutes is up, you know,
It's gonna get worse as it gets colder.
correct.
Well, not worse, but more traffic.
So what we noticed today is cars in the roundabout front by the flagpole there at the high school, they're doubling up now on the outside and the inside of the circle. So Dan talked to me about that, and I said, for now, I think we should just wait on that, because, I mean, at some point, if we close everything down, you gotta be able to, you know, I don't think they wanna wait in line
I
for so long.
think this year is difficult because you have 7th graders here too, and a lot of them are getting picked up, so the line coming in, I have high school kids, so I always try to avoid that line coming in because it is so long, and that's why people are doubling up in there too. Otherwise, you could be out on that outside of the high school property by the time school gets out. You're sitting there up at the tennis courts for sure. I think that's why people are doubling up, but it's really difficult to get back out once you're in because of that doubling up.
Another thing we talked about in that area with Dan is that when we enlarge the parking area around the main entry, we know there's a lot of employees parking there, and it's really meant to be for visitors. So this summer, we talked about remarking that as all visitor parking. So that we've got plenty of other parking spots for staff.
Yeah.
So we're gonna try to enforce that a little more. So once we can put the signage up, and leave all that open for parents to park in.
Yeah, I've seen staff.
That's a good idea.
Go ahead.
This isn't related to where this is happening in the parking lot, but I've looked at this for all 7 years of being on the board, and it seems to me that we should be doing something with the entrances to our parking lot to the main road that runs from the Ed District over towards the road by the tennis courts or whatever, that I call that main road. We have several access points to that main road from our parking lot, and I think some of those should be blocked off and send the cars all the way towards the Ed District, not all the way to that district, but down that line, and then enter one spot into that road. To me, it looks like it's an accident waiting to happen with cars going both ways potentially, and then several different access points to that road.
With the way we got it configured now, the discussion too would be, could we have parents pick up the kids back here, because now we don't use this as much with the bus routes, you know, they're all lined up along the student exit there. Lining up there, maybe having the buses come in the front of the school, they're the ones in the roundabout, they're picking up, and have everybody else come this way around back, picking up and leaving, might help that congestion out front a little bit.
That's good to think about, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we've had a lot of good ideas from different people, and Dan and Pat, I think it's worth, like, you just had some conversation, what's the best route? Think about it before we jump into it.
You can't do it in the middle of the year, but maybe next year at the start.
I think having buses where they're supposed to be is kind of like a middle school. They took away that.
Can I put one thing out here quick, Kevin? Not on parking. I'm gonna bring it up tonight after reviewing the board packet, but I put out a suggestion last year, apparently it didn't go anywhere. With the congestion around the cafeteria area of our school and the density of how many students are there, I suggested that we get a special event tent right outside the door and put tables in there to increase the capacity of our, or the ability of our cafeteria to have people spread out more in the eating area. And then they do come with heating systems and stuff, and I think we need to take a look at that. Sound like we're moving some kids in the locker bay with tables and different stuff. Once again, I just want to put out, let's look at that option as a way to increase capacity. We're not increasing capacity, we're increasing the ability to spread out our students while they're eating lunch. And I think that doorway going out towards the bus area or whatever, it may or may not work, it may be optional, that doesn't fit into that. I just think it's the way to get more space, and we still can be used in the winter if we put the heat option, and what a great way for COVID dollars to use.
We'll at least take a look at it.
Yeah, there are a lot of good ideas here on the parking lot and all that. We want to make it as safe as possible. I'll just add one more thing, Robert. Do you have anything to look?
I do.
I will say that, whoever's idea it was on that lady at, or man, whatever, I think it's a lady, I've seen it, Pioneer in 58. In the mornings and afternoon, pushing the button, she's there, and it's helped, and I see kids coming there before or after their time there. We don't want them there forever, because kids are coming to school early or whatever, but it seems to be working.
I would agree.
I think that's good thing, and I think, and I'm just guessing, just more of a guess, it was just not pushing the button, because if you do that, then the time is plenty to get for the crossing. If you're just going by the pad that you hit, one car hit it might change before you get across.
It's fun to see her interacting with the kids. You can tell that they have a good rapport.
And if they see her push the button, they if she's not there, may come back and push it themselves. All right, anything else? Dave from State Farm, thanks for coming.
I did forward on that link to that video that I wasn't
Oh,
able to
yeah,
find, so
I see that.
I think it was in our board packet, I didn't try pushing it, but they had it play at the end of that presentation, the slideshow or whatever.
All right,
That link should work correctly.
thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, we got school board meeting in 11 minutes, 11 minutes, so we are adjourned. All right. I gotta figure out how to get out of here.
Thank you.